Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far and welcome to today's video, which is going to be the next episode in my makeup and movies series where I'm going to be trying out some new makeup while sharing all of my thoughts on the 7 films that I saw at the cinema in the past few weeks. So today I've got the new Victoria Beckham Beauty Foundation drops that I've been sharing some very mixed thoughts on recently. I have the Bobbi Brown Holiday Eyeshadow palette, which I haven't used at all yet, so I'm very excited to try that for the first time. I don't have a new bronzer, but I do have the new Sonia G brush. This is the Oval Hybrid, which immediately is telling me it's going to be the best cream bronzer brush of my life. So I'm going to be trying that out today with my favourite cream bronzer, the Chanel Beige. And then I also have some Nars holiday products, including this stunning blush palette and one of the lipsticks. So that's everything that we're going to be trying out today, along with some very mixed film reviews. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start off with eyeshadow, and I'm going to go in there. And the first film I saw this month is Good Boy. Now, I have been so excited for this. If you haven't heard anything about Good Boy, it's the first ever horror film filmed from the perspective of a dog. Now, as you know, as a huge horror, thriller, psychological terror kind of girl when it comes to my films, I have been hearing about this film for months. It's been very highly talked about. This was something, you know, brand new, never heard of this. It sounds bizarre, and I really did not know what to expect, and it was quite different to my expectations. So I thought how this was going to go is that it was going to be like through the eyes of the dog. That's what I thought it would be like. So we'd be sort of walking around as if we were the dog. I don't know why I thought that, but I was wrong, in fact. This shadow here lightly in the crease. So yeah, that's what I thought I was going to be getting, and obviously with those kinds of thoughts I was concerned, no idea what to expect, went in with very sort of low, I don't know, low expectations, but confused, befuddled expectations, I guess. No idea what was going to happen, what it was going to be like. Was I going to like it? Was it going to be utterly ridiculous and bonkers? And was blown away. So I was wrong. It's not like a POV of the dog. It's what it is it's filmed at the height of a dog, essentially. So the camera is lower, but you do see the dog. So it's sort of as if there was another dog there witnessing what was going on. So the main character is absolutely the dog, and we are experiencing the goings on from like a dog's perspective, how they see things, what they notice versus what the humans in the film notice. So you really have very little human acting in here, and you don't even really see much of the humans. You sort of see them from sort of, you know, chest down. You don't see a lot of facial expressions or faces at all from the humans because the camera level is lower to that of a dog, which was just genius. And the fact that they were able to keep the audience so invested and involved and gripped without any human expression, really very minimal dialogue whatsoever. You know, there is a single human man through the vast majority of the film. 95% of the film is a man and a dog, and so obviously there's not a lot of conversation that, you know, as most people do. The man does talk to his dog, but there's, you know, he doesn't talk back, so it's a one-way street. Now, I loved this. It was so well done. This dog, so the facial expressions of this dog, I have a Labradoodle, and I thought that he was extremely expressive in his facial expressions until I met Indy in this film. I have never seen a dog be able to convey the range of emotions that this dog did so clearly. You know, whether it's curiosity, concern, worry, fear, terror, shock. Just, yeah, the curiosity is just, it's every little nuanced response, whether it's, you know, head like movements or even his eyes, his facial expressions. It was frankly groundbreaking, jaw-dropping from this dog. If they give Oscars to dogs, no joke, he should win. And so during this film, the one issue I had is I became a little concerned about what they were doing to scare the dog and to worry the dog and to stress the dog as much as it appeared that he was. That threw me off. That's the one thing that I guess halfway through this film, as things started to build, it distracted me. Like, all I can think of is, what did you do to make him react like that? Because I became more and more uncomfortable wondering that. I wish I had sort of read what I read before the film, because I could have relaxed a little bit more then and perhaps enjoyed it. It definitely distracted me, thinking, did you really scare him? Did you really upset him? It slightly was causing me not to be able to just fully stay invested. But the film really worked so much better in reality than what I had envisioned and the sort of premise that I built up in my head. It worked so well. I didn't miss human interaction or dialogue whatsoever. This dog was ridiculously engaging and gripping, and within about 2 minutes of watching this film, I had already decided that there's nothing I wouldn't do for Indy. So as I said, I did quite a bit of research after I saw the film on how they got the reactions out of Indy, what they did, and I do now feel way, way better than I did before, knowing what I know about how exactly they went about this. So for a start, Indy was the director's dog, which makes it so much more impressive. This was not like a Hollywood dog that's been trained its whole life to act. This was a regular pet that belonged to the director, and they spent 3 years filming him with his normal people around, his mum and dad, and they just interacted with him. A lot of the time, his dad, the director, was the body double on set so that the dog was comfortable with his owner. And they spent 3 years never allowing or asking the dog to act for more than a couple of hours at a time. So he was never too tired. He was never sort of not having a normal life. They would just incorporate the filming into his normal day-to-day activities, walks, things like that. They would play. His normal owners would sort of call him or talk to him to get him to turn or to look or to listen and things like that. So as much as is possible, they essentially just allowed the dog to be a dog, and they just spent that amount of time filming him over the course of 3 years to capture the numerous responses, reactions, movements, facial expressions. That sounds strange to say about a dog, but believe me, when you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I do feel a lot better. I still have some questions about, there are times when this dog looks petrified, terrified. And so I do have questions about what happened there, and I haven't found an answer. But I do feel better that he wasn't stressed. He wasn't doing these, 10 hours of filming and being scared over and over and over again to get the response that they wanted. I feel fairly confident that wasn't the case. But the film on its own was a 10 out of 10 for everything I look for a thriller, for a horror film. No gore really what to speak of. Slow, intense build, constantly gripping, on edge of my seat, scary enough for me. I took a mark off. So the true mark is 9 because of my concerns and just the questions around a film being so focused on an animal's acting, time, effort, energy, responses. Although it was such a groundbreaking way of filming, especially in that horror genre, I'm not sure it's one that we should see a lot of. I'm just going to use my Hourglass mascara today because I don't have a new mascara. I wish I did, because I feel like it's about time we had a new fantastic mascara, isn't it? But moving on to Black Phone 2. Now this is a film, I have seen the original and I did like it. Don't necessarily think it was like one of my all-time favourites, but it was a solid film that I enjoyed some while ago now though. What I loved about this, so if you're not familiar with Black Phone, like the original, it sort of centres around a boy who is taken by a baddie and his sister who has a sort of special ability, and she sort of helps him be rescued, helps him be found. with this special ability. As always, I'm trying not to give spoilers or tell you too much, but that was essentially the gist of the first film. Now, spoiler alert for the first film, if you haven't seen it and you want to go back and watch that, don't, like, skip ahead a little bit, okay? But in the first film, the baddie dies. So I had no real idea as to how exactly we were going to have a sequel with that same bad guy, but we did, and it worked a lot better than I thought. So this was the same characters, same people, same brother and sister, but they are considerably older. I think it's maybe been like 5 years or something since the events of the first film. So in this one, the brother and sister are starting to experience concerning things. They're still very much living with the repercussions and the mental health following the events of the first film, and they decide to sort of look into some unanswered questions, particularly surrounding the death of their mother. This was terrifying, okay? I was petrified. Went to see this on my own at the cinema. Really scary. I loved that they had an original story that wasn't sort of just repeating the first film, but with obviously a connection and a continuation from that first film. But it was 2 hours long, this film, which is quite long for a horror film. It's not necessarily a crazy long time for a film in general, but that is quite long in the horror genre, and it felt quite slow at times. I'm using the Hourglass priming moisturizer because I do find the Victoria Beckham foundation a little flat and not necessarily drying on the skin, but I feel like it doesn't look sort of skin-like as I would love it to. So I'm going to add this more luminous primer to try and help with that a little, see if we can like it a bit more today. So I found with this film, another big issue is I feel like the dialogue, the script was, it really was kind of lacking for me. I feel like the actors did a phenomenal job with what they were given, but sometimes the script was really rather basic, and it was almost distracting that it was just not, there was just not enough sort of depth to it, to the dialogue, and the back and forth between the characters was very, very basic. And the young girl in this film, like so many films that we've seen, carried this film on her back like we've never seen before. She, pay her double. Whatever you paid her, pay her double. So this was a 7 for me. I loved the plot, the storyline, I love the continuation, the actors were phenomenal, but I feel like the writing was a little lacking, and it was at least 20 minutes too long. Moving on to him. Now, I had seen a trailer for him, but I don't think I definitely didn't understand what it was going to be about before I saw it. It was quite different. I think I originally thought that this was about a American footballer who goes mad and on a rampage. That's what I think I thought this was going to be about, which is not necessarily wildly inaccurate, but it's much more than that. So this film actually focuses on this condition called CTE, which is a huge talking point at the moment in sport. I think American football is the biggest part of this conversation. So this is a degenerative brain disease, prevalent, numerous even cases of this have been found in the NFL, and they have found, you know, quite a strong link to playing in the NFL and head injuries sustained and then developing this horrifying, terrible brain disease, which is absolutely terrifying. So this is something that is a big discussion at the moment about the safety and how to protect people, athletes doing these sports where they come into contact with their head, when they experience head trauma on, you know, a very frequent basis. And this entire film essentially follows the journey of an athlete who has developed this. So this athlete has a head injury at the beginning of the film due to an attack, and then we follow his sort of journey with what he experiences next because of this head injury and him developing this degenerative brain disease, his sort of journey into hell and madness, but caused by this horrific brain disease. So it took me, because I didn't know that was the case, so it took me a little bit of understanding and working out what was going on to really follow this story. I think I was really confused because it goes off in quite quickly. It sort of starts off fairly normal and then it descends quite rapidly into chaos and carnage and just really bizarre. And I, you know, initially, before I worked out what was happening, I initially just thought, is this really real? Is this really happening? What's going on here? Is he imagining things? Is he going crazy? Or is this really happening? And I suppose that's the point. You know, he doesn't know either. He thinks he's losing it. He doesn't know what's real anymore. He's getting flashbacks and he's getting disturbing visions, and he doesn't know if he is really experiencing what he's experiencing. Is everybody else losing it? Is he in this terrifying position? And what is real? And he doesn't know. He can't trust his own sight or his own brain or his mind, and he's fully just losing the grip on reality, I suppose. So that is how this film goes. It's very interesting, and there's a huge amount of symbolism in this film, and it really did, for me, you know, having been an athlete myself, obviously in a very different sport, but then working in elite and performance sport and Olympic sport, and just being around that environment my whole life. What I found really, really interesting and actually really, really accurate here is the representation and the symbolism around how people treat athletes, particularly, which is obviously not something I experienced, but I have seen and witnessed when it is a very high earning, big money sport, because swimming isn't one of those, certainly not in the UK. And a lot of the sports I worked with, certainly that's not the case either. These are not, you know, for the vast majority of Olympic sports, there's less than 1% of the athletes at the Olympics who will ever make £1 million or will ever be rich and well off at all. Whereas obviously in the NFL, that's pretty much everybody involved. There's this huge money element to sports like that, sports like football, like American football, that we just don't experience in Olympic sport for the 99% of us. So that was really interesting. I feel like they did a really good job of conveying the sort of treatment of athletes and all of the sort of hangers-on and the entourages and the behaviour of people around rich athletes and athletes with the potential to be very good and successful and rich in the future. All of that I thought was really, really interesting, like the moral questions in here, not just around the CTE, but also just around high money sport in general, was really interesting and very topical, I thought. One thing really distressed me, because given that we have seen, you know, actors really doing their own stunts and really putting things at risk and stepping out of their comfort zone, shaving their heads or gaining or losing weight for roles, why couldn't we do a real ice bath? The ice bath scene, as an athlete who's done many ice baths herself and witnessed very many, was absolutely disastrous. It was so very clearly not real ice, and I don't know why we couldn't have taken a real ice bath, okay? Given what other things actors will push themselves through to be really involved in the part, that was bizarre. So please, next time an athlete is supposedly taking an ice bath in a film, can we just make it a real ice bath, please? Okay? That'll be fine. Well, it's definitely allowed me to get a lot more glow and a lot more of a skin-like finish using this Hourglass primer with the Victoria Beckham today. Already, we're in a much better place. I'm feeling much better about this foundation than I have done previously with other less hydrating, glowy primers. So maybe we're onto something here. Maybe this is a way that I can like it. I'm just going to use my Chanel concealer. It's still pretty new. Obviously, I have already reviewed this one, but I did get a lighter, I am using a lighter shade today. This is BD41. I have been using B30. This one is more yellow and a bit lighter, which I think because the Victoria Beckham foundation is slightly too deep for me at the moment. That's gonna help us out with that. So another issue that I had while watching him was an embarrassing story for me, okay, but I had a bit of an uncomfortable situation while watching this film, so I went as usual on my own to see this. When I came in, not late, but the trailers had already started, and there were only 2 men together in the screen when I came in. And I had, you know, obviously pre-booked my seat, and my seat was a little closer to these men, given that they were the only people in the whole screen. I thought it was a little odd for me to like go and sit directly behind them. So I actually changed my seat on my app and went and sat sort of on the opposite side of the aisle and back a couple of rows. And that was the only people in this screen. And so I felt, I've never really felt like this in the cinema before, but I think it was a really small screen. These 2 men that were sat together and then just me in the pitch black. I felt a little on edge. That when the film started, these men moved and sat right behind me, like directly behind me, but like 2 rows back. And again, that just intensified how uncomfortable I felt, because why did they go and sit right behind me? And I know the answer is just that those were the premium seats and they obviously hadn't paid for them. So they'd sat in their assigned seats until they were sure no one was going to like come in and check. And then they'd just gone and sat in the more comfortable premiere seats. Bit cheeky, but absolutely allow it, none of my business. But it still, you know, made me a little like, oh, what are they doing back there? You know, I didn't love it. Especially when you're watching a scary film, because I tried to sit at the back because I don't want people to see me jump, and now you've gone and sat right there and will see my buttocks leave the chair should I be jump scared. And believe me, there's a jump scare in this film that definitely got me. So you have been warned. I think there's basically one, but it is a big unexpected one. Okay, so then when the film had been going about 5 minutes, a woman came in and I thought, oh, thank goodness, another lady. I'm not alone with these 2 random men right behind my back anymore. And I was relaxed a bit. She came in and sat a row in front of me and a little bit along, right? I felt better. I felt more comfortable. There's another woman here. We're absolutely fine. Relax, calm down, lady. Then, about halfway through the film, she like jumped up and almost ran out. And then there was this noise started from where she had been sat that was like this really loud ticking. Let me tell you, I was convinced this lady had planted a B word. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on here. That's where my mind went, okay? I was sat there sweating. What's happened? Why did she run out? What's she done? And what is this noise? It was really quite loud, this like like this. I sort of jumped up. I was like, has like she spilt something? Is something happening? I jumped up and looked over and I couldn't see anything. And I sat back down and I was just like, do I leave? Do I run? What's happening? Should I call the police? Do I need to alert these strange men behind me? Do we need to what's going on? And then this little thud happened, which alerted me to the fact that what that noise was, in fact, the chair just going back up. So she had run out probably just to go to the toilet. And the chair had just been, you know, folding itself back up at the speed of a snail or a slow worm. And that's all that was. And I sat there the rest of the film like, there is something seriously wrong with me, but we move on. So him, for me, was a 7. I realised it was supposed to be sort of disorientating and confusing and just a mess of what's real and what's not, because we're supposed to sort of experience what this athlete was experiencing with him, and that's the whole intention. But I just don't enjoy those really messy, flitting about, chaotic, what is reality. I just don't enjoy that kind of film. So although I understand the symbolism and the reason that it was like that, that is just not my cup of tea. So this was a 7 for me. It was solid. I enjoyed elements of it. I thought the storyline was great. It definitely lost me a little bit in places, but I certainly think it's a very important film and it raises really important questions and visibility, and it just gets us talking about this and what is happening and what we need to be doing to protect athletes. Then I think it's really worth seeing. Next up, our family, there is a hair on my nose, it's driving me mad. Next up, our family film of the month this month was Sketch. I don't know about you, but please tell me, have you heard about this film? Have you seen a trailer for it? Do you know anything about Sketch as a film? Because I I think I had seen one trailer for this film, and that's what sort of got me thinking, I wonder if my children would like it. There was just really nothing else out that was child friendly, and we wanted to go to the cinema. So that's really the only reason that I looked into it, that I really heard anything about Sketch. And I'd seen a trailer, but I thought it looked a bit too scary for my children. My children are 9 and 11, and they have seen, you know, Harry Potter's and been a little bit scared by some things in there, but there's no predicting it. I've said this before about children. You can't predict. Like, my son will watch Jurassic World and he'll jump when there's jump scares, but he doesn't scare him so that he, you know, doesn't enjoy it, or he doesn't like it, or it's too much, or he can't sleep after he's seen it. He really loves those films, but he got very, very scared during Migration because the chef was mean in a cartoon. So you just can't predict what is going to scare them a lot of the time. So I showed them the trailer and they both said, no, it looks good. They wanted to see it. So we did. But I was very much precautionarily near the doors, thinking we might not make it through this whole film, because this is about a little girl who draws in a sketchbook all of the time, and she has quite dark tastes. So she's a sort of little girl where teachers have called the parents about the kind of pictures she's drawing, and due to a sort of series of unfortunate events, the creatures and things that she's drawn in this sketchbook, with the most amazing imagination, but a very dark one, all come to life and run rampage round the world. So that's the premise of this film. This was the most perfect children's family film ever. It's fun, it's funny. Yes, it is a bit scary, but in a way that, in a child safe way. Like, I think children like a bit of scariness in films that, you know, they want to sort of be made to jump, and it's all quite fun, but there's a limit. They don't want to see gore. They don't want to be scarred for life. They want to be able to sleep safely in their beds after they've seen a film, but they want a little bit of, oh, that was a bit scary. Do you see what the difference? Do you see what I mean? It was also beautiful, with this really gorgeous moving storyline. Trigger warning, this isn't really a spoiler because it is the whole premise of the film, but the mother of the children and the mother of the family has passed away at the beginning of the film. That's kind of where the daughter's drawings come from. So I think it's really important to know that sort of thing if it happens, because obviously for some children that would not be a good idea for them to watch that film. If they've lost a parent, especially recently, that might, you know, not be a good choice of film for them. It's just good to be aware of these triggers, especially in family children's films. But it was beautifully covered, beautifully handled, you know, lots of really lovely moments without it being made too sad and like traumatic. It was very moving, lovely messaging, unbelievably acted by really quite young children. And, you know, it's not just them sort of having to act scared. They did a lot of real comedy acting, which I think is, you know, very challenging for young children. Things like comic timing and delivery of comedy is probably much harder for children than it is for them just to run screaming, you know. So I feel like that was actually really, really impressive. This was a straight 10 out of 10 for me and my whole family. You know, I always ask the children when we go to see a family film, what would you give it? Everyone, my husband, both my children loved it so much. They both gave it straight 10 and they both were laughing out loud. And I don't know if this is just my bonkers children. Children don't laugh out loud as much as adults. A lot of the time I'll say to them, didn't you find it funny because I didn't see them laughing? And they'll say, yeah, it was hilarious. And they will say it was hilarious, but they like to tell me they were laughing inside, laughing internally. I don't think that's an option. But it takes a lot for children, I feel like, to belly laugh out loud at films. And they really were laughing their heads off, like the whole way through. They didn't get too scared. It was enough sort of short bursts of the scarier characters that they just enjoyed it and loved it. And it was really wholesome. The whole family loved it. Straight 10 out of 10 from all of us. I'm not really sure there's like a highlighting shade in here for me. I think they're all a bit more blushy. So next up, I went to see Regretting You. So this, I don't want to say, there's not a lot I can tell you about this film without really giving quite a lot away, really severe spoiler alert. So I'm not going to tell you too much. All I'm going to say is that this is a sort of romantic drama, like family drama with some tragedy and just a lot of moral questions, behaviours. It is heart-wrenching, this film, okay? I bawled watching it several times. Tears were streaming down my face. It's really one that gives you a very complex mixture of emotions. I was angry, I was furious, I was confused, and I really had you questioning, what would you do? This was very much like a Jodi Picoult book in film. Is it by Jodi Picoult? I don't think it is. But it's very much that sort of moral question. What do you think you would do? Do you agree with the way that everybody in this film handled this? This is about two couples. So two sisters, and they, you know, have sort of childhood sweethearts, and then they grow up and they're, you know, these two couples, two families, and how, you know, they interact and their lives are following a big tragedy. That's sort of as much as I can tell you without giving anything away. I had a few issues with this. So it was undoubtedly very moving, and it did an excellent job at making you think, how do you feel about this? Is what's acceptable, what's not? How do we feel about the behaviours, the choices people made? Why did they make them? What are we okay with? It's really, really tough. This is based on a book, and I haven't read the book, and I'd like to hope that in the book, the storyline is far more spread out over a lot longer period of time. The issue in the film with this storyline that I felt is that it was really rushed, like the stages that we went through. We went from like A to B to C to D, and it felt like almost in a couple of weeks. And it just did not, it was very jarring, and I just felt like it really took away from the natural process of what probably was more realistically had happened here, and probably what happened in the book. It just felt very cold and callous because the timeline felt so condensed, and I feel like on paper I'm sure this could and maybe has happened, but that timeline of what happens next was much too rushed and condensed, and it just made me really dislike the lead characters and just feel very uncomfortable with the way that things went down. There was definitely some dodgy acting in a little bit of this, if I'm okay to say that. The storyline I think was gorgeous, and it really made me just want to read the book, which I imagine was done much more slowly and sort of sensitively as far as the emotions and the journey that the characters go on. Much too rushed in the film for that sort of situation, but it was very beautiful of a storyline, moving, very confronting, thought-provoking. So for me this was an 8. It could have been a 10. Could have been so much better if it just didn't feel like the characters had moved so quickly. Next up, let's talk about Shelby Oaks, but first of all I must show you the packaging of this Nars lipstick. An absolute delight. So I think this lipstick might be a little light for me on its own, so I'm gonna put it on its own first so you can just see the shade, and then I'm going to see if I need a bit of Lisa Eldridge 1N Sculpt pencil. So next up was Shelby Oaks. Now this is a classic horror film, right up my street. I'd seen a couple of trailers for this and I was so excited to watch it. It looked suitably terrifying. I love that. Beautiful peachy everyday nude, but it is a hair light. So I'm going to try it with the pencil. So I was very excited to see this. So this is a sort of, it's a very like modern day horror. So this is about a woman whose sister has gone missing several years ago. Her sister is a sort of paranormal YouTuber. So she is part of this group of friends who go around to like paranormal haunted places and they make YouTube videos, and essentially the whole team went missing, and then they were all found no longer with us, apart from her sister, who has never been seen since. And she basically decides, I'm going to take it upon myself to go and find her, to investigate what happened and hopefully find her sister. This pencil is literally perfect. Any nude lip you have that's a hair light, problem solved. I loved this so much. This was terrifying. I had to adopt half eyes throughout almost the entire film. If you're not sure what half eyes is, it's the technique that I adopt when I'm in the cinema alone and watching a scary film, and I don't want to scream out loud because it will be embarrassing, but I know I'm going to be scared soon. I go half eyes, I squint, so I can only see through half of my eyes. Sometimes I go cross eyes, that also is very effective. So if anyone was looking at me in the cinema, they wouldn't know I was doing that, but it's enough to take the edge off if I get too scared and I think I might scream or jump out of my skin and embarrass myself. I just half close my eyes and it's half as scary. Problem solved. That I had to rely on the entire time. I was on the edge of my seat hyperventilating for 95% of this, and I loved it. I feel like it's the perfect mix between being filmed as almost like a true crime documentary and like found footage, like a mixture of those two things, but the found footage was like professional team of YouTubers, so it wasn't like, you know, Blair Witch product, you feel slightly like you might be sick and have a headache at the end of it. So I loved all of that. This was gripping, intense, original storyline. The one issue I had with this is the highly unlikely behaviour of the sister. Tell me, right, your sister has gone missing and the people she was with are no longer with us in the most quite shocking way, let's say. No spoilers here. And some other strange goings on occur that are terrifying. Do you, on your own, go off to the places that she had been that already we know are haunted, because that's why she was going there, alone, with, you know, no backup, no, I don't think even telling anyone where you're going, with no defences, with no weapons, with no nothing, just rock up to haunted places alone where a load of people were taken from us terribly quickly and someone was taken and we don't know what happened. Are you going there on your own? Okay, now I know it's her sister, but I have a sister, and let me tell you, if she chooses to go off to haunted locations and she gets herself taken, will I be sad? Sure. Will I, you know, try and get her back? Yes, but I will be taking the appropriate number. I will be taking 46 other people with me to that location, okay? I won't be going alone. I will be bringing dogs and weapons and as many police force people that I can summon, all right? I will be going in daytime to well-lit areas only. All right? Because let's face it, you got yourself into this position. So I don't know why I should have to go there also. I didn't choose this. So that felt wildly silly and risky and just unrealistic. So that took a mark off, but this was a 9 out of 10 for me. I like to come out of films fully traumatized, and I was, so it's a win. I'm going to do another coat of mascara because I've run out of makeup to do and we have one more film to go, which was Die My Love. Now this was Jennifer Lawrence, I knew it would come, and Robert Pattinson. So I didn't really know a lot about this. I don't know if it's just me, the sort of films I watch. I think I did get a trailer for this, but I think what it is the trailer doesn't really give anything away. And I read the description of this film and it's described as being like a woman's descent into madness, essentially. So it feels very much, you know, like an Oscar bid type of film that's sort of very much focused on Jennifer's acting chops. I didn't love this. I thought this was going to be a bit scarier based on the trailer. It's certainly not a horror film. It does have some, like, not even scary moments, but unnerving moments, obviously, but it's very much more a sort of a drama, and it obviously again has psychological elements, but it's not scary, so you don't have to worry about, you know, anything being scary or like goriness or anything like that. It is very much following a woman's absolute terrible struggle with her mental health, having recently had a baby and moved to a very isolating environment and place. Now, similarly to him, the storyline, the plot, the flow of this film is so muddled and confusing, you know, as to what order of events things occurred and where are we in the timeline. Nobody could tell, or I couldn't tell, put it that way. Again, I do think that was intentional to sort of mimic Jennifer's character's like descent with her mental health and into confusion and muddled brain herself, and really not knowing, and this erratic behavior, not knowing what's real and why she's behaving the way she is, and then sort of having a better day, and that sort of back and forth way that our mental health often goes. So I understand that was definitely, I feel, a creative choice to make the film feel so confused and muddled and like you didn't really know where we were in the storyline. But again, like I said, I don't enjoy that. I find it really disorientating, and then I also find it hard to connect to the characters and the storyline when it's chopping about like that. So that's a personal preference for me. That really disturbed my connection to the story and my following of the story and connection with the characters. I feel like Robert Pattinson's character was just really a man really struggling to know what's going on and what to do for the best, but he was portrayed really dealing with things so poorly that it made you hate him, and I don't think that was necessarily fair. It felt very slow to me, and it felt like it was really lacking direction. I think sometimes these films, they try to be so clever and metaphorical that we almost lose the reality in a way that is hard to follow and connect, and this was an example of that for me, unfortunately. I didn't get bored necessarily, but I just really didn't connect to the characters or the storyline, and whenever I started to, it was then moved away, so I lost it again. So yeah, for me this was just okay. I feel like it could have been so much better if we'd had a bit more of a flow and a cohesive journey with the storyline and the development of Jennifer's character, and if it had been slightly clearer as to what order of events things were happening. So this was a 6 for me, definitely not my favourite, and the acting unquestionably amazing. Also, don't go and see this with your mum. There are some rather intense love scenes, shall we say, that I wasn't necessarily expecting. They were lovely, but I was very glad that I wasn't sat next to my grandma. Okay, so yeah, you have been warned. Okay, so I'm actually loving my makeup today, which I wasn't necessarily expecting, because I knew I was going to be using the Victoria Beckham foundation, which I have talked about in my monthly roundup as not hating it, but just not being my favourite. And today, not that it has become my favourite, but I definitely like it a lot more today. Some of that is misleadingly the other products that I use. I love everything else. So that's one thing, you know, a foundation, you can really add to it and recover it by using other base products that you really, really love. So I think that's one thing. I think the Hourglass Priming Moisturiser, however, has made a beautiful difference to this foundation. My main complaints about the Victoria Beckham foundation, if you watch my October Beauty Monthly Roundup, was one, it just is it looks a little flat and a little dry on my skin. I think a lot of people are finding it very natural and more glowy than I am using my regular primers. I've tried this with the Shade and Illuminate from Tom Ford. So I have tried a hydrating, illuminating primer, but the Hourglass is more hydrating and illuminating than the Tom Ford. I've also tried it with my Soft Matte from Tom Ford, and that combination just really is fairly matte and quite flat and just not as natural and skin-like as I like my foundations to be, but this combination today has gone a lot better. My skin looks juicier, glowier, more skin-like, and just overall it looks much better than the other couple of primers I've tried it with. So I like it much more today. If you have already purchased this and therefore your money is gone, try it with this primer if you already have it, or the glowiest primer you have, the most hydrating primer you have. I will say it has dried down since I first applied it, so it's still not quite as glowy as when I first applied it, but I do have glowy products over the top. So I'm really liking how my skin looks today. It is a little, the shade is a little deep for me. This is shade 6. I think it's slightly deep or slightly warm, or maybe both, but the shade is ever so slightly off, so that does, you know, throw things. But it's covered, my redness is evened up beautifully. It's looking very flattering on lines and texture, so definitely this has helped it. The one biggest negative about this foundation, well, there's a couple. One, the packaging. I think for the price it feels so light and flimsy, so I don't love that. Second of all, the smell is so terrible. As I said in my monthly roundup, it smells very strongly of aftershock to me. Now, some people in the comments didn't know what aftershock is. It's an alcoholic drink that is very, very famous for being sort of one that you only have in shot form and like 10 at a time. No one's ever had a nice time the day after you've encountered that alcohol, so hence why the reason I don't enjoy getting a huge waft of it at like at 8 o'clock on a Monday. I'm getting flashbacks, so that's a big issue. The smell is awful and just not good memories. And then the packaging, and then the foundation itself, I like it better today, but I just find it for the price point, there's a lot nicer foundations that I love a lot more. It doesn't wear especially well, it doesn't flatter me especially, I just don't find it especially beautiful. So yeah, I do like it more today, but it's always just been like okay for me, and I don't want to have to use a specific primer to like a foundation. So although I like it better today, and that's good news because now I can get some use out of it and like how it looks if I use it with this. But, you know, foundations that I really love and value a lot and would recommend will go with any primer or without a primer and look beautiful every time, you know. The Bobbi Brown eyeshadow palette, I feel like this is really very similar to last year's, which is the slightly disappointing thing about it. I loved last year's palette. That was definitely a little more cooler toned, I think, to this one, but there are some really similar shades in here which I wish they had gone slightly, like a lot more further away from repeating what they did last year, because the formulas are beautiful. I think their mattes build and blend beautifully. I think we've got a gorgeous combination of mattes here. We've got, you know, a lighter transition shade, a warmer and a cooler one. We've got a richer, deeper, more smokier matte, and we've got a creamy highlighting bone shade, and then you've got a really nice variety of shimmers. I love their shimmers. They have like no fallout, they're lovely, and they have a nice amount of intensity without being super sparkly, and like I said, really no fallout. They're very smooth, these shadows, as well. I think the packaging is always gorgeous and very special, but I do wish that the color story had been more different to last year's, because if you purchased last year's, I think you're going to get similar looks out of this one, so it feels unnecessary. And if you're a big fan of Bobbi Brown, of course you would have purchased last year's palette, and so now you don't really have something to really excite you, which is a little bit sad. This brush from Sonia, oh my goodness, I don't know if you noticed, but I was putting bronzer on for half an hour because I was just enjoying it so much. I love the previous brush that she did like this. Is it the smooth? Oh, I've got it right here. I love both of the brushes that she's made in this sort of format. We've got the mini sheer buffer and the sheer buffer. This is very much along these lines with the sort of two layers of brushes, one very dense, one sort of really spiky on the top, that really applies the most beautifully diffused natural layer of cream products. These are my all-time favorites from Sonia, and this one, it's got this sort of more oval shape to it. It's about the same size as far as the brush, slightly smaller actually than the sheer buffer, larger than the mini, but it's that elongated sort of oval shape that is just perfect for getting quite a sculpted bronzer, whereas the original sheer buffer is going to give you a stunning sort of diffused wash of bronzer. This is going to be better for sculpting because it's got that beautiful narrow angle and shape, and I loved it. It's easier to get around the hairline and not apply it too much, and I could have just used this all day. I think it's amazing. I had very high hopes for it and it hasn't disappointed me at all. This Nars palette, I mean, I know we've got like 25 of these each per person, but this is stunning. This is much richer than they typically are, which I really appreciated. More pigmented, you know, for someone with deeper skin tone. This has really got some great, intense, rich shades, and they really can be built up, but also blended and used in a really diffused way. I had a few people comment saying, oh, this is much too deep or much too rich, but we have had a lot of Nars palettes for lighter skin tones in the past, so it is nice to see something much richer this time. But don't be afraid, because you know that whole top row can be used on a lighter skin tone. Absolutely, you can build these and you can use these lightly. I used this shade today, of course, the more sort of neutral peachy shade. It's stunning. I don't have any highlighter on today. It's just the glow from that blush, and it's gorgeous. Now the lipstick, I did briefly just quickly pop this on when it first arrived, and I thought I was going to love it. It's maybe when when I applied it without the liner, a hair lighter. It's a hair too close to my skin tone, I feel like, but then I do have a slightly deeper foundation on today, so hopefully if I apply a lighter foundation, it's not going to be as close, so that will help. It's a hair lighter than I wish it was, but it is beautiful. Such an everyday wearable shade. The packaging is stunning. It's just a perfect, subtle, everyday nude. It goes gorgeously, as every nude does, with Lisa's 1N pencil. But again, I love it when brands, as I keep saying recently, make holiday collections that have really special, funky, pretty extra packaging, but actually the product inside is wearable year round and usable day to day, which is exactly what this is. I just think it's the perfect lighter peachy nude. It reminds me a little bit of Charlotte Tilbury's Perfect. Should I do a swatch comparison? Why not? We're still here. Coming through. No, it looks like the Charlotte Tilbury is, I was going to say a fair bit lighter, but maybe not. They're close-ish. The Charlotte Tilbury is definitely a bit more peachy, and Blame, the Nars shade, is definitely a bit more of a nude with a hint of peach, but not a million miles away. Charlotte Tilbury, Nars. Okay, so next on my list, right now in 10 minutes time, I'm going to see Wicked. I am beside myself. I'm getting to see it a day early because there's a charity screening, like a charitable fundraising screening at my cinema, so I get to see it a day early, which I'm very excited about. So I'm going on my own. I'm going again with my whole family, my sister, on Tuesday to see it. I like to see it twice. I saw the first Wicked film twice. I will cry my eyes out both times for sure, but I like to get the first one out by myself. One, I just wanted to see it as soon as I possibly could, and everybody else is, at school, so they can't come with me. And two, no one else in my family cries at films, so I'd like to get the most amount of tears out with no one else present. Next on my list, The Running Man. I tried to see that this week, but I just ran out of time. That I'm very excited for. I did see the original. This one looks like it might be, they've sort of Hunger Games'd it a little bit, so I'm interested in that. Keeper, another one that I'm not 100% sure about, but looks like a dark, twisted sort of love story. Not really sure what happens. The trailer didn't give much away, which I love. Definitely want to see that. After the Hunt, got my first trailer for that recently, immediately piqued my interest. I also had my first trailer for the Housemaid film, the Frida McFadden book. I have read as many of her books as possible. I talked about them in my wish list video, my Christmas wish list video. Big fan of Frida's books. The Housemaid, I think, was the first one I read because it's her most well-known and most discussed. The film, I mean, I think it's going to be good. It looks good. I know people, the casting is a little controversial, but I think it's going to work. I think they have done a good job. Just based off of the trailer, I'm excited to see it. I'll absolutely have to. I have quite high hopes, but not a bad makeup day. I'm now going to go and cry it all off while watching Wicked for the next couple of hours. Wish me luck, but thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I would love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye 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 bye.